Now, before I wrote this speech, I'll tell you how lucky I am and how fortunate I am. Last Thursday, after the rehearsal, I told my secretary, I'm running home. I can't write in this place. I need some peace. She said, okay. So I run home. I open the door. I walk in. And half of the females in the senior class at Fordson are on my kitchen table. So I walked around and I came back to school. This is how fortunate I am. But the reason I told you this story is I asked them a question. Guys, what do you want to hear Saturday morning? They said, Mr. Fadlallah, don't bore us with your speeches. Just tell us something funny and get it over with. So listen up. And listen very carefully. This is the last time you have to hear me speak. Almost 30 years ago, I bought my first IBM typewriter. I was a teacher assistant in this same building. I was 20 years of age, and I still remember how happy I was when I gave the secretary in the main office $50 to buy her own personal typewriter that she no longer needed. I carried this big, heavy machine, walked back into the auto shop where I worked, showed it to the teacher I worked with, and I was so happy. I gave it a cleaning job, and I used compressed air to take the paper particles out of it and to make it look good and shine. Like a child, very happy with his new toy, I could not wait to get home to show my wife our brand new old IBM typewriter. Before the last bell rang, I carried my new toy. I walked out to the parking lot. I opened the trunk, and I wanted to put the typewriter in. When all of a sudden, a teacher standing in upper A hall started screaming at me. Hey, you, put it back where you got it from. Now, he ran down. And in the parking lot, he wanted to make sure justice is served immediately. He continued with his outrage, ordering me to open the trunk and put it back exactly where I got it from. I had no chance to explain. It was very obvious. I was guilty as charged. I was guilty of being a young Arab male stealing a typewriter. I still recall how degraded I felt. I can't tell you how degraded it was. Although Hilda, the secretary, gave me a receipt, a handwritten receipt, not for any reason, but my wife asked me for a receipt, hoping that the cost of the typewriter would be a tax deduction. Harold, the teacher, did not want to hear any explanations. Now, I want you to fast forward 25 years. 25 years later, I'm sitting home, minding my own business, when two reporters from the Detroit News knocked on my front door. Their first question was, are you the principal of Fordson High School? So, you got to be cautious. So I responded with a question. Who told you so? And one of them pointed down, and she said, your neighbor down the street. I said, oh, okay. Come on in. I invited them in. They were asking me a bunch of questions about two former students arrested in Ohio, charged with terrorism. The reporter asked me if I knew these kids. And what a mistake I made. I said yes. I know them. I know their families. I know their extended families. And to summarize, if these kids are terrorists, my own son is a terrorist. You see, the neighbor down the street, few houses away from my house, is Usama Abu Hassan's father. Usama Abu Hassan and Ali Husayki were not as lucky as I was. They were both arrested. They were charged with terrorism. They had to wear the orange overall, and they were jailed for 10 days. Why? I want you to think about this question. Why? First, someone with the name Osama should never walk into a Radio Shack and buy 3 cell phones. Regardless what his motive was. Especially if he's going to ride in a car with someone like Ali Husseiki. And Osama knew Ali Husseiki's mom worked for the airlines. And somewhere in the car there was a procedural manual about airline hostess etiquette, a manual anyone can retrieve off of the internet. Osama and Ali, in my opinion, were definitely guilty. Guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Guilty of being 2 Arab males, fitting the profile of a terrorist. What more evidence do you want other than somebody walking in, flashing a driver's license with a name like Osama? Ladies and gentlemen, you see how lucky I was? 30 years ago, I was accused of being a thief. It was not until later, it was not until I stood up for Ali and Osama. It was not after I did what any reasonable father, any reasonable teacher, any reasonable principal, or any reasonable neighbor would do. It wasn't until then when I became guilty by association. Only then when I became a terrorist like Osama and Ali. Although we look back at Osama's picture in the orange overall and we laugh today. We laugh, but while we laugh, it hurts. If you've ever had the croup scarf as a child, it hurts more than the croup scarf. It hurts when your character, your honesty, your integrity are always under the microscope. Always being dissected because of the color of your skin, because of your race, because of your culture, or because of your religion. Ladies and gentlemen, it is painful to be subjected to a character DNA every time an ill-minded person points the finger at you. I don't want you to get this the wrong way. This is not about me. It was never about me. And it's not about Osama or Ali. How many of you will be guilty until proven innocent? How many of you will be randomly, and I underline randomly, searched every time you travel? How many of you have to justify your name, your skin, your look, your nose, or your mother? Why is she wearing a scarf? How many of you will have to uphold the American flag very close to your heart at all times to prove your allegiance? And how many of you will have to be subjected to a character DNA to satisfy the loyalty standards? And how many of you were subjected to educational malpractice and injustice in our own school system, where you had a teacher or 2 or 3 that retired 10, 15, 20 years ago, and they pretend they are still teaching? Once again, this is not about me. If it was, I will write a big, fat, juicy book about how many times my character was and still being assassinated. And this is not about Osama and Ali. This is about you, every single one of you. When you walk out today, when you walk out of this institution, you should know that education is the ultimate weapon you can possess in America. Education is the only weapon capable of defeating ignorance, stupidity, bigotry, racism, inequity, and injustices. You should walk out today full of pride, knowing that many of you have an advantage of being an Arab American. You have the ability to do something many others cannot do. You have the ability to defend American democracy, American ideals, and American values in 2 languages, the same values and ideals that elected Barack Obama to the presidency of the United States. You should walk out today convinced that it is education that moved me from being accused of stealing in this building, from being accused of stealing to become the principal of this building. You should walk out today knowing that it is resilience, perseverance, and education that moved Osama Abu Hassan from the jailhouse to become a teacher and a coach in this big house. You should walk out today with pride of being who you are and never allow any ill-minded person to put a dent in your character and your integrity. Every one of you can relate to Michael Jordan. You all know he did not make it to be on the varsity basketball team in his high school. But I bet most of you do not know who Chris Langan is. Christopher Langan is considered to be the smartest man in the United States. His IQ score was over 200. Chris Langan's scholarship was revoked. His mom forgot to sign his financial aid papers. He dropped out of college, got a job as a bouncer in a bar. Now, Chris Langan works on a farm. Not too long ago, he appeared on a TV show called 1 versus 100. He challenged the intelligence of 100 people put together, and he won. Chris Langan is still considered one of the smartest people around, but he did not get a college degree. He did not get a college degree. Regardless how smart you think you are, regardless how deficient you think you may be, it is education and only education where you can make changes in life, positive changes that will portray the true image of who you really are. Thank you.